The following is a reading from the Mahabharata, given by H.D. Goswami on December 23, 1988, in Laguna Beach, California.
Last week I read, last session, last episode as you put it. We read two chapters. The chapter about the birth of Yastev and also the invasion of the earth. So at this point, I'm going to resume the story where the Mahabharata itself resumes this story. There's other supplementary material, not exactly on this, specifically on this main story, which I won't read. It involves other stories which are related as part of the general teaching strategy of the Mahabharata. So I will continue, though, where the Mahabharata resumes the main story. I brought a lot of material, so we can go as long as everyone can, as long as I last. So I'll begin with this chapter. Once in the dynasty of Ikshwaku, there was a king named Mahabharata. Once in the dynasty of Ikshwaku, there was a king named Mahabharata who ruled this earth. He ever spoke the truth, and he fought heroically for justice in our world. I didn't read this last time. But like many great kings, Mahabharata was not satisfied with the pleasures of this world. He desired to experience life on higher planets, where the inhabitants are millions of times more advanced than the human beings of Earth. With the help of Vedic scientists, the wise Brahmanas, he performed hundreds and thousands of precisely calculated sacrifices, and thus satisfied mighty Indra, chief of the higher beings who administer our universe. Known throughout the world by many names such as Zeus, Thor, and Jupiter, it is actually the great Indra who rules the heavens, releases the rain, and throws the indomitable thunderbolt. I think I did read this. No?
You told us last time.
Oh. All right. This is confirmed by Prabhupada that actually these demigods worshipped around the world, they're actually the Vedic demigods. Yet Indra is not the supreme god. After all, he achieved his exalted post by carefully following the divine law. Indeed, after practicing great piety and penance, he was selected to rule the cosmos. And to this day he dwells on his radiant planet, the opulence of which we human beings can hardly imagine. By the careful performance of Vedic processes, King Mahabharata traveled to the planet of Indra and personally experienced the celestial enjoyment of the higher beings who reside there. On one occasion, Indra and his followers went to an even higher world, that of Brahma, the primeval creator of this universe. Even Brahma is not the supreme god, but he is certainly the greatest being in this universe. Indra manages the cosmos, but Brahma is beyond ordinary management, being the primeval creator. Wise men call him the grandfather, because he is like a father to the gods who are like our fathers. On that occasion, the godly beings had gone to worship Brahma. Many saintly kings were present, and indeed Mahabharata was also there. Then the greatest of river goddesses, whom we know as the Ganges, also came to worship Brahma. Ganga, as she is known to the gods, wore garments as luminous as the moon. But as she entered the assembly, a celestial wind shook those garments and raised them up, exposing her flawless beauty. Immediately the godly beings turned their faces down at the embarrassing scene. Mahabharata alone stared boldly at the lovely goddess, even in the presence of holy Brahma. Lord Brahma frowned upon his lack of modesty and chastised him as follows. Mahabhisha, for your boldness you shall again take birth among the mortals on earth. After suffering as a human being, you shall once more return to the higher world. Cursed to take birth on the earth, Mahabhisha began to consider all the different earthly kings whom he might accept as his father. Mahabhisha had achieved the higher world by sacrifice and austerity, and he wanted a father who was similarly dedicated to the Vedic science and who would thus help him to execute the necessary procedures to return to the celestial world. King Pratipa is the best, he thought, a brilliant monarch and the best choice to be my father. Meanwhile, lovely Ganga had noticed the king staring at her. She knew that her beauty had caused a great king to lose his self-control, and this attracted her mind. Indeed, as Mahabhisha meditated on his fate, the river goddess began to desire his company. As she left the assembly of Brahma and moved along a celestial highway, Ganga saw the 8 Vasus, residents of heaven, coming toward her on the road. Their bodies were battered, and some impurity had robbed them of their normal effulgence. Indeed, they were thoroughly dejected. Seeing them in that condition, the beautiful river goddess inquired, "My dear Vasus, why are you so pale and forlorn? Is everything all right with the residents of heaven?" The godly Vasus replied, "Dear Ganga, the great Saint Vasishtha Muni got angry with us and for a small offense, and now he's cursed us. You know that he's a most powerful sage. Well, one time he was sitting by himself at sunset incognito, and all of us were passing by. We didn't recognize him and came too close and offended him. He got angry and cursed us to take birth below on the earth, and there's no way to undo what has been spoken by a Vedic master. Therefore, dear Ganga, please come to earth as a human lady and be our mother. It would be shameful for the godly Vasus to enter the belly of an ordinary human woman." "All right, I'll do it," Ganga replied, "but surely you've selected among the mortals the very best man to be your father. I want to know his name, because that man will be my husband." "King Pratipa," said the Vasus, "will have a most virtuous son named Shantanu, and Shantanu will be our father." Ganga realized that the future son of Pratipa was actually the same Mahabhisha who had boldly watched her in the assembly of Brahma. "O sinless Vasu," she said, I admire the person you've mentioned as my future husband. Yes, I shall fulfill the desires of that king Shantanu, and also grant what you godly Vasus have requested." "But Ganga Devi, please promise us one thing," said the Vasus. "As soon as we are born, you must immediately throw us, your own children, into the water, so that we can drown and be free of these miserable human bodies. We don't want to stay down there on the earth. As soon as we take birth, the curse will be finished, and we can return at once to our real home in the higher world." "I shall do as you say," said Ganga, "but King Shantanu should have at least one son that lives. His union with me cannot go completely in vain." "All right," the Vasus agreed. "Although we will be leaving the earth, each of us will invest 1/8 of our potency in a single child, and thus Shantanu will have the son that he desires. But that son will not beget a family among the mortal human beings. You will have a powerful Vasu as your son, but your son shall have no children of his own." Thus, reaching an agreement with the goddess Ganga, the Vasus became joyful, and in a relaxed mood, they went on their way. Cut out all the commercials, soldiers. Next, chapter 92. King Pratipa worked for the welfare of all living beings, seeing all creatures as the children of God. For his spiritual advancement, he once sat down on the bank of the holy Ganges, and for many years he chanted the Vedic hymns, which aim at the absolute truth. One day, lovely Ganga herself, the goddess of that very river, appeared before the king. Beautiful and aristocratic, she was as exquisite as the supreme female Lakshmi Devi. As Ganga came out of the water, her most desirable body glowed with celestial beauty. Since Pratipa was to be her future father-in-law, she wanted to test his purity and at the same time obtain his son as her husband. She went directly up to the saintly king as he peacefully studied the Vedas and sat down on his right thigh, which was as powerful as a shala tree. Seeing the thoughtful young lady, her face innocent and appealing, sitting on his lap, King Pratipa remained calm and in a kindly voice said to her, "My dear lady, what can I do for you?" "What is it you desire?" "O king, it is you I desire," said the girl. "You are the greatest king of the Kuru dynasty. Please accept me. The learned say that a man should not reject a qualified woman who needs a man to love." "My dear lady," said the king, "you are certainly an attractive woman, but I cannot enjoy such a relationship with anyone but my wife. Please understand that I've taken strict religious vows, and besides, we're not of the same community, since you are not a mere king's daughter." "O king," she insisted, "don't you see that I want you? Don't you want me too? I'm not an impure woman, and I'll never bring you misfortune. It's not wrong for a king to accept an educated young lady who desires his protection." "Young lady," said the king. He'd actually taken a vow to be monogamous. "My young lady," said the king, "if I did what you want, no matter how pleasant it might seem, I would violate my sacred vows. And once the sacred law is broken, I'd lose the real perfection of life." Ganga knew that the king spoke the truth. After all, Mahabharata had fallen from the higher planets for acting improperly in the presence of Brahma. According to Vedic science, without strictly following the principles of moral goodness, one cannot rise to the higher realms of the universe. King Pratipa knew this well, and he continued to speak to the young goddess. "Anyway," he said, "you yourself chose to sit on my right thigh, and that is meant as a seat for one's child or daughter-in-law. You must know that the left thigh is meant as a seat for one's lover, but you rejected it. Therefore, I will not make love to you. Rather, young lady, you should become my daughter-in-law. I will gladly accept you for my son. O lovely one, you approached me and sat on the side of a daughter-in-law." "O wise and virtuous king, let it be so," said the woman. "I shall unite with your son. Because I admire you so much, I shall enter your dynasty, the illustrious house of Kuru. All earthly kings find shelter in the Kuru monarchs. Even in 100 years, I could not describe all their good qualities for the Kurus, for their saintly behavior is beyond compare. And yet, dear king, I warn you that your son will not be able to understand all that I do, nor from where I have come. Therefore, he must not judge my acts. If we all agree to this, then I will bring him great pleasure, and through our beloved pure children, your son will attain the heavenly planets." Because we would do that service to the Vasus. "Let it be so," said the king, and at once Ganga disappeared from his sight, and King Pratipa, waiting patiently for the birth of his son, began to practice severe austerities along with his wife, to please the Vedic masters and the supreme Godhead whom they worship. He knew that with their blessings he would obtain the son he desired. Finally, when the king and queen were advanced in years, Mahavishnu took birth as their son. They called him Shantanu, the child of a peaceful father. And Shantanu remembered well that in his previous life he had attained to the higher worlds by his dedication to the Vedic science. Determined to regain his former position, he constantly performed kind and charitable activities, for the Vedic science rewards acts of goodness. Seeing that his son had reached physical maturity, King Pratip instructed his son as follows. "Once in the past, before you were born, a woman approached me. She knew that you would be my son, and she desired to serve you and to bring you joy. She's a gorgeous young lady and eager for a husband. When I saw her complexion, I understood that she's not a human being, but rather a celestial maiden. If she ever approaches you, my son, and desires to have a family by you, then accept her. I may not be around when that happens, so let me warn you now. You must never question that lady. No matter what she does, don't ever say, 'Who are you? Where did you learn these things?' Even if she does something that you feel is wrong, don't challenge her. My dear son, if that woman accepts you as her man, then by my order you must accept her also, for I have given my word." Having thus directed his son, the king coronated him and entrusted him with the kingdom. Finishing his worldly duties, King Pratipa entered the forest to prepare himself for the next life. Young Shantanu became famous all over the world. He was a master of Dhanurveda, the military science, and he ruled his kingdom wisely. A Vedic king was personally responsible for the safety of all his citizens. No one would tolerate a leader who collected taxes but could not ensure the safety and prosperity of the citizens. Shantanu would leave the opulence of palace life and wander throughout the forests, living austerely with his trusted men. In those ancient times, the world was covered with many forests, and forest creatures flourished, growing to large numbers. Therefore, the kings responsible to protect the innocent citizens were allowed to occasionally hunt in the forest. In this way, they kept a proper balance in nature by hunting ferocious animals that menaced human life and other creatures whose unlimited growth would make it impossible for people to cultivate necessary food crops. Simultaneously, the kings perfected their skill with weapons. Otherwise, at a moment of crisis, they would not be able to protect innocent men, women, and children. Young Shantanu was fond of the simple life in the forest, and he would go there often. He enjoyed strolling along the lush banks of the Ganges, the holy river, which even higher beings like the Siddhas and Charnas come to visit. Once, as the king wandered alone on the river bank, he saw an extraordinary woman whose body glowed intensely like that of the supreme female Lakshmi. Every part of that exuberant woman's body was faultless, and she was adorned with celestial jewels. She wore the finest garments, and her skin was shiny and fair, like the bright hollow of the lotus. Seeing the perfection of her beauty, the astonished king felt his hairs stand on end, and he drank at her beauty with his eyes, but his eyes could not be satiated. And Ganga saw the brilliant monarch moving along the river bank, and felt great affection for him, as if he were her dearmost friend. And though she continued to glance at him, that playful goddess could not satisfy her eyes. King Shantanu could see from her dress and behavior that the woman was unmarried and desirous of his company. So he spoke to her with a kind and tender voice. "My dear young lady, I have no idea whether you are a goddess or a woman of the earth, or whether you have come here from the planets of the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, the Yakshas, or the Pandagas. But even if you are born of the gods themselves, I beg you to please become my wife." Hearing the king's kind and gentle voice, and seeing his smiling face, and remembering her own promise to the Vasus, the irreproachable Ganga went to the king and gladdened his mind with the following words. "O earthly ruler, I shall become your obedient wife, but whatever I may do, whether it be good or bad, you must not try to stop me nor criticize me with unkind words. As long as you act in that way, I will stay with you, O king. But if you should restrain me or speak unkindly to me, then I shall certainly leave you at once." "So be it," the king told her, and Ganga felt the greatest joy, for she had obtained the best of kings as her husband. Shantanu took his queen and enjoyed with her, overwhelmed by romantic desires. He remembered the warning of his father never to question this woman, and so he never spoke a single word against her, nor did he question her in any matter. Ganga was so nicely behaved, so beautiful, generous, and aristocratic, and so eager to please her husband and to be alone with him, that the great king felt completely satisfied. Indeed, Ganga possessed heavenly beauty and complexion, for she was a goddess appearing on the earth as if a human being. In fact, as a deity of the sacred Ganges, she could travel at will throughout the universe, but she agreed to become the submissive wife of that lion among kings, Shantanu, who dedicated his brilliant mind to the task of returning to the celestial world. Ganga pleased her husband in many ways. She was expert in conjugal affairs, and she knew how to make her husband feel loved. She would allure him with coquettish gestures and charm him with romantic dancing. And as the king enjoyed his heavenly wife, so Ganga herself relished her years with Shantanu. Indeed, the king was overwhelmed by the extraordinary feminine qualities of Ganga Devi, and became so attached to their loving affairs, that he didn't notice the many months, seasons, and years that were passing away. As he enjoyed with his wife, fulfilling all his desires, the powerful king begot 8 sons in Ganga's womb, and all of them were as effulgent as the immortal gods. That as soon as each son was born, Ganga would throw him into the water, saying, "I do as you wish," and thus drown her son in the waters of the Ganges. Naturally, this was most disturbing to the king, but he did not say a word, fearing that his wife would leave him. Finally, when his 8th son was born, the king could no longer bear the pain. He intensely desired a son, and seeing his wife smiling at their child, and prepared to drown him. The king spoke out, "Don't kill this boy. Who are you? Who has taught you these things? Why do you kill your own sons? You child killer, don't commit this greatest of sins. Stop, you wretched woman. You desire a son, said Ganga, and actually you are an ideal father. I will not kill this boy. My time with you has now expired, according to our agreement. I am Ganga Devi, the daughter of Janu, and I am served by all the great sages. In order to perform a duty for the gods, I have lived with you as your wife. Our 8 sons are the demigods known as the Vasus. These illustrious and powerful beings were cursed by Vasishta Muni, and thus were forced to take a human birth. They did not want anyone but you as their father on the earth. And there was no human mother who could give birth to them, and so I have performed that duty. I agreed to live on the earth only to act as their mother. And because you have begotten the godly Vasus as your sons, you have already achieved in your next life the planets of the gods as you desired. Please understand that I made an agreement with the godly Vasus that as soon as they were born, I would liberate them from their human birth. And by my actions, they are now freed from the curse of the great soul Vasishta. I wish the best for you, but I am leaving. Please protect your son, for he will do great things in this life. My time on earth is up, for the Vasus are now free. But always remember that I, Ganga, have personally brought forth this child and given him to you to be your son. Come on, you know. Chapter 93. Shantanu inquired from his wife. Before she leaves, they talk a little bit. What did the Vasus do? It's not just funny, you're talking. What did the Vasus do wrong? And who is the sage Vasishta who cursed them all to take birth in human bodies? And this child, whom you have personally given to me, Ganga, what did he do to so anger the sage that now he must live among human beings? The Vasus are lords of the entire world. How could they take birth among human beings? O Ganga, daughter of Janu, please explain this to me. When her husband had thus addressed her, the goddess Ganga, who was known as Janagi, replied to the great king Shantanu as follows. O hero of the Bharata dynasty, Vasishta Muni is the son of Varuna, the lord of the water. Therefore the sage is also known as Apava, son of the water. Vasishta used to perform severe austerities in his hermitage, a holy ashram filled with gentle birds and animals. Located on the side of mighty Meru mountain, that ashram was filled with the flowers of all seasons, and the surrounding forests abounded in tasty fruits, vegetables, and roots. In that sublime setting, the most holy Vasishta devoted himself to the spiritual science. Now it so happened that Daksha's powerful daughter, named Surabhi, along with her husband Kashyapa, begot a wonderful cow which gave not only milk, but everything that its owner desired. The great soul Vasishta desired to use that cow not for any selfish purpose, but to do good to the world. And that extraordinary cow actually came under his care. Vasishta's desire cow lived peacefully with its master in that sacred forest where sages purified their lives through disciplined penances. The inhabitants of that forest were happy to follow the laws of God, and the desire cow grazed peacefully about without any fear. One day, the 8 godly Vasus, headed by Prithu, came to that forest, which was a favorite spot even for the gods and godly seers. The Vasus came with their wives and strolled all about the forest, enjoying the charming hills and groves. At that time, the lovely wife of one of the Vasus, while wandering in the forest, saw that amazing desire cow of sage Vasishta. The Vasu's wife was struck with wonder by the perfect behavior of the cow and the opulence which it provided. Fetching her husband, she showed him the attractive desire cow, pointing out its full, rich udder and handsome tail. Indeed, the cow was endowed with all desirable qualities, and its behavior was excellent. Her husband, who was a Vasu named Yo, commented on the beauty and fine features of the cow, but then informed his godly wife as follows. Dear goddess, this excellent cow belongs to Vasishta Muni, the son of Varuna. In fact, my beautiful one, this entire celestial forest belongs to that sage. I've also heard that any ordinary human being who drinks the sweet milk of this cow will live for 10,000 years without losing his youth. Hearing these words of her husband, the slender-waisted goddess, who was exceptionally attractive, spoke to her powerful husband as follows. I have a girlfriend in the human society who is a king's daughter. Her name is Jinavati, and she's most lovely and youthful. Her father, whose name is Ushinara, is a saintly king known for his honesty and wisdom. Jinavati is well known among human beings for her exquisite beauty. Oh, powerful husband, it's for her that I so much want this desire cow and her calf. Oh, best of the gods, you always do good to others. Quickly, take this cow away from me, so that my girlfriend can drink its milk. Then she alone among the human beings will be free of old age and disease. My dear faultless husband, you're so powerful. You should do this for me. There's nothing in the world that I desire more than this. Hearing these words from his celestial wife, and desiring to please her, the Vasudhyo, along with his brothers, headed by Prithu, took away that cow. Dhyo was so much swayed by his lotus-eyed wife that he could not even consider that the cow's owner, Vasishta, had acquired frightening power through his severe austerities in yoga. Nor did Dhyo foresee his own fall down as a result of stealing the sage's cow. When the son of Varuna returned to his ashram and began gathering up fruits, he did not see his cow and her calf in the celestial forest. So that austere sage began searching throughout the forest, but the great-minded one could not find his cow. He soon understood, however, by his divine vision, that the cow had been led away by the Vasus. Suddenly overwhelmed by rage, that he cursed the 8 Vasus. Since the Vasus have stolen that wonderful cow, they shall certainly fall from the higher planets and take birth among the human beings, he said. Thus the mighty Vasishta fell under the control of anger, and that greatest of scholars cursed the 8 Vasus. Having cursed them, and realizing that much of his piety had been spent by such an act, Vasishta again fixed his mind on the practice of austerity. When the Vasus returned to their home, they realized that they had been cursed by a great soul, and so they returned at once to see the powerful sage. The Vasus tried to appease Vasishta so that he would withdraw his curse, but the sage would not grant their request. He had come to his own conclusion about what was best for the offenders. Indeed, he was an expert in matters of justice and religion, and he told the Vasus, the 7 Vasus headed by Dhara shall be free from my curse within a single year. But this Vasudhyo, for whose sake the others have been cursed, shall remain on the earth. Since it is Dhyo who actually stole the cow, he shall live a long life on the earth. Even though I spoke to you in anger, I shall not now make those words false by changing them. But I will grant the following to the Vasudhyo. He shall take birth as a great-minded man, learned in all the books of knowledge, and ever devoted to dharma, the path of virtue. For his father's sake, he shall renounce the pleasure of women, and thus he will beget no offspring on the earth. This is to his advantage, for in that way he will easily return to the higher planets, with no obligations or entanglements below. Having thus spoken to the 8 Vasus, the powerful sage departed. The Vasus then approached me and begged me for a boon, which I of course granted to them. O Ganga, they said, as soon as each of us is born, you personally should throw us into the water. Therefore, O saintly king, it was to save the poor Vasus from mortal life that I acted as I did. Indeed, I acted properly. My dear Shantanu, only this Vasu named Dhyo, who has now taken birth as our child, will remain for a long time in this world, due to Vasishta's curse. Having explained all this to the king, the goddess Ganga vanished from his sight. Taking her young child, she went her way, according to her own free will. Her child became famous as Deva Vrata, one who is sworn to God. People also called him Gangeya, the son of Ganga. Thus the son of Shantanu, who surpassed his father in good qualities, received two glorious names. And Shantanu himself, burning with grief at the loss of his wife, returned alone to his city. Huh? I'll read one more. We should have BBT commercial breaks. If I read it all, there won't have any more programs. I'll translate more. All right, read one more. This is a pretty long one, actually. It's very long. I'll read half of this. Vedic masters like Vaishampayana, who were almost contemporary with Shantanu, tell us that he was a king who possessed immeasurable good qualities. Since ancient times, the descendants of King Bharata have ruled Vedic society. Shantanu took birth in the house of Kuru within the Bharata line, and he spread the fame of his noble family. Indeed, the great history called Mahabharata describes this extraordinary king and his descendants. According to sages like Vaishampayana, Shantanu was a wise ruler, revered by his subjects as if he were the king of gods. It is most significant that even in his grief at the loss of his wife and children, he did not flinch in the execution of his duties and continually thought of the welfare of the citizens. He treated all people with justice and was known to always speak the truth. Qualities such as self-control, charitableness, intelligence, modesty, determination, and tremendous power were ever present in the great soul named Shantanu. This most qualified ruler was expert both in spiritual and material affairs, and he carefully protected his own Bharata dynasty and all honest people as well. Vaishampayana tells us that the king's shoulders were big and broad, and his handsome neck was circled by 3 lines like a well-formed conch. When challenged, he moved with the ferocity of a maddened elephant, yet he always placed justice and virtue above his personal pleasure or gain. And the citizens, seeing his unfailing piety, did the same. These qualities were present in the great soul named Shantanu. There was no other king on earth equal to him in virtue, and thus, although fixed in his own duties, the other world leaders spontaneously chose him as their emperor and coronated him as the King of Kings, for they knew him to be the wisest and most fair-minded. Under his leadership, the kings of the earth were free of grief, fear, and harassment, and always awoke refreshed after sleeping peacefully at night. In this way, King Shantanu preserved the glory and stature of the Bharata race. When the world enjoyed the protection of saintly kings led by Shantanu, the teachers, warriors, merchants, and laborers all carefully performed their duties. In this peaceful environment, the selfless and enlightened brahmanas automatically commanded the respective human society, and thus all mankind progressed on the spiritual path. The ruling warriors served and obeyed the self-realized teachers. Merchants and farmers gladly followed the legitimate rulers, and the laborers, faithfully attached to the teachers and rulers, worked honestly to assist the merchants and farmers. Thus, dwelling in the charming city of Hastinapur, capital of the Kurus, Shantanu ruled this ocean-bounded earth. By giving generously in charity and restricting his own sense gratification, Shantanu was blessed with supreme opulence, but he remained simple and straightforward, honest and wise. He was naturally handsome, and the citizens were always eager to see him, knowing that he neither envied nor unduly favored anyone. Fiery as the sun, swift as the wind, frightening as death in his anger, the king was yet as tolerant as the earth itself. Moreover, when Shantanu ruled the earth, no one could whimsically kill a bird or beast or any creature simply for sport or malice. Shantanu was steady in his submission to the divine law and to the qualified Brahmins who taught it, and thus his entire kingdom bowed down as one to the Creator's will. Casting off selfish desire, Shantanu ruled all creatures equally, and to satisfy the demigods, sages, and the Supreme Lord himself, who was enjoyer of all sacrifice, the king initiated grand religious ceremonies and brought them to completion. In that kingdom, not a single living creature met an unfair death. And if anyone was unhappy or lost without shelter, it was the king himself who took them under his wing, like an affectionate father. The helpless animals and all of God's creatures found a kind and caring father in the king. When the best of Kuru lords, the master and king of kings, Shantanu ruled the earth, speech was always devoted to truth, and thinking was directed toward charity and virtue. After enjoying 36 years with his wife, Shantanu, left alone, took to life in the forest, camping alone or with his ministers and friends, finding solace in the simplicity of God's creation. Devavrata, Shantanu's only son, had grown under his mother's care into an extraordinary child. He was equal to his father in beauty, equal in noble behavior, equal in deeds, and equal in education. Gangeya, the son of Ganga, was in fact one of the godly Vasus, and so he easily mastered all military weapons, both earthly and unearthly. He had great strength, great stamina, great courage, and he possessed great skill in the battle of chariots. One day, as King Shantanu walked along the Ganges River, here, don't stand with me. One day, as King Shantanu walked along the Ganges River, hunting for deer, he noticed there was very little water in the river. Seeing this, that best of men, Shantanu, tried to understand why the water had suddenly stopped flowing in the holy Ganges. Searching for the cause, the wise king saw a beautiful young boy, quite large for his age, and with a powerful physique. The boy was employing celestial weapons, as if he were Indra himself, and was thus blocking the entire Ganges River with his rapid-firing arrows. Seeing this boy completely block the great Ganges River with sharp and perfectly placed arrows, the king was struck with wonder. For before his eyes he was seeing a superhuman feat worthy of Indra himself. Indeed, the boy was Shantanu's own son, but since that wise king had seen him only once, moments after his birth, he had too little memory of his son to recognize him now. Seeing his father, the boy bewildered him with his mystic power, and then quickly vanished from that place. Seeing this extraordinary event, King Shantanu began to suspect that the boy was actually his son. And thus he cried out to Ganga Devi, "Please show yourself to me." And Ganga showed herself to the king, appearing in a most beautiful form, and taking in her right hand her well-dressed boy. Ganga herself was exquisitely adorned with jewels and spotless raiments. But although the king had known her before, she appeared in such a way that the king could not recognize her. She then spoke to him as follows: "O king, here is the 8th son, whom you previously begotten me. O tiger among men, kindly take him with you. Your powerful son, taught by Vasishtha himself, has now mastered the Vedas along with their supplements. He has perfected the use of arms, and is now a master archer. Indeed, he is equal to Lord Indra in battle, and is deeply respected by the gods as well as the demons. Whatever science is known to the great sage Shukra, that very science is completely understood by your son. The primeval sage Angira begot a son who is honored by the gods and demons alike. But whatever science is known to that child has been fully mastered by your mighty-armed son. The fierce sage named Parashuram is so deadly in battle that no one can approach him. But whatever weapons that sage has mastered are firmly in the grasp of this boy. He is your own son, O king, whom I give to you. He is a great fighter, but he is also wise in the ethical and practical affairs of kings. O heroic Shantanu, bring your heroic son to your home, where he shall dwell with you." When the goddess Ganga had thus entreated the king, he took his child, shining like the sun, and departed for his own city. When he reached that city, which was equal in splendor to the city of Indra, King Shantanu thought to himself that all his desires had been richly fulfilled. And before all the members of the royal family, he proceeded to install his son as the heir to the Kuru throne. Go on or stop?
No. We'll take a vote.
Feet. Shantanu's son quickly grew in fame, and by his acts he delighted the royal family. Actually, you read for well. I'll read a little bit more. And by his acts he delighted the royal family, the residents of the capital, his own father, and the entire kingdom. Devavrata, as his son was called, displayed excellent behavior and strictly followed the spiritual principles of life. In fact, Devavrata surpassed his own father in good qualities. He had full knowledge of earthly weapons as well as extraterrestrial arms. Actually, he was all that a king could desire in a son. "4 years passed as that most powerful monarch, Shantanu, enjoyed life with his son. Then one day as the king walked along the bank of the Jamuna River, he smelled an extraordinary and indescribable fragrance. Searching for the source of that fragrance, the king wandered all about until he saw a young lady who was the daughter of a fisherman, but who shone with the beauty of the gods themselves. 'May I ask you who you are, young lady?' said the king to the lotus-eyed girl. 'And to what family you belong? What do you happen to be doing here?' 'I'm a fisherman's daughter,' she replied. 'Actually, my father is the king of the fishermen. He's a great man, and by his order, my duty is to steer this boat and take passengers across the Jamuna River.' Observing the godly beauty, sweetness, and fragrance of the fisherman's daughter, King Shantanu felt a strong desire for her. So he went to her father and explained that he wanted his daughter as his wife. He formally asked the fisherman king for his daughter's hand in marriage. 'The day my daughter was born,' replied the fisherman king, 'it was understood that someday this lovely girl would be given by me to a suitable husband. However, my dear king, I have a desire in my heart, and please let me tell you what it is. If you've actually fallen in love with my daughter and are asking for her hand in religious marriage, then please agree to my terms. You're a saintly king who always speaks the truth, and I believe your word. If you grant me what I want, then I will certainly give you my daughter, because I know there will never be another man as good as you to marry my daughter.' 'Let me hear what you want,' replied King Shantanu, 'and I may accept it or not. If it is something which is proper to give, I shall give it, but I will never grant you that which should not be given.' 'My dear king,' spoke the fisherman, 'the son that is born to my daughter, and no one else shall be coronated after you as the next ruler of the earth.' When King Shantanu heard the fisherman's words, though his whole body burned with desire for that maiden, he would not give that boon, for he had already promised the throne to his son Devavrata. Shantanu was prepared to accept the loneliness and pain of not having a wife, but he would not break his word to anyone, and certainly not to his beloved son Devavrata. Thinking constantly of the fisherman's daughter, the earthly monarch turned and headed back to the great capital of the Kurus, Hastinapura, his mind torn by grief. Devavrata began to notice that his father was always lamenting, always meditating on something. And so one day he spoke these words to his father. 'You have provided all kinds of prosperity and comfort to all the rulers of the world and to all their citizens. You have provided all kinds of prosperity and comfort to all the rulers of the world and to all their citizens. So why are you so unhappy? And what are you constantly lamenting for? You are always meditating on something, dear king. So why don't you ever talk to us about it?' Thus addressed by his son, Shantanu replied, 'Undoubtedly I'm always thinking about something, just as you said. In our great dynasty, you are our only son and heir, O Bharata. Therefore, dear boy, I'm grieving over the ephemeral nature of this mortal world.' O son of Ganga, somehow or other, our family must not come to misfortune. You alone are undoubtedly better than 100 ordinary sons, and I couldn't even bear to accept another wife and again be frustrated in my desire. My dear boy, I only want that our great family not perish from this earth. Those who know the principles of dharma, the divine law, say that for a ruling family having one son is like having no son at all, since this world is full of dangers, and our very occupation is to constantly risk our lives to defend the innocent people. My son, you are courageous by nature and always intolerant of insult, and your duty is to constantly bear arms. At any time, day or night, the people can come to you for protection, and you must give them shelter against all aggressors. Therefore, my sinless son, your death cannot come otherwise but by battle of arms. And that is why my mind is torn by doubt. If and when you pass away, how will this family go on? Now, my beloved child, the real reason for my unhappiness has been revealed. Devavrata was quite intelligent, and he took his leave, thinking deeply on the matter. At once he approached an elderly government minister who always desired the best for his father. Going near the elderly man, Devavrata asked him about the actual cause of his father's grief. The trusted minister then explained to that noble Kuru prince what had actually happened. He told how Devavrata's father begged for the hand of the fisherman's daughter, and how the fisherman king had placed a condition on the marriage. Devavrata, accompanied by some of the elderly warriors, then went to the fisherman king and personally requested the fisherman's daughter for his father Shantanu. The fisherman welcomed the Kuru prince, and after properly honoring him, addressed Devavrata as he sat in the assembly of kings. You are indeed a lord, and a worthy representative of your father, Shantanu. You are a fine man, Devavrata, and an ideal son for your father. What can I say to you? It would be most desirable and prestigious for anyone to marry into your great family, and even Indra himself would regret missing such an opportunity. You may not know it, but my daughter Satyavati is actually the daughter of a great king. I read that last time. Is actually the daughter of a great king who is equal to your family in his fine qualities. It was from his seed that my famous daughter was born, and even her father many times praised your father Shantanu. He used to say, among all the kings, Shantanu deserves to marry my daughter. Why, even the celestial sage of Sita wanted to marry so much to marry my daughter, but I refused even that best of sages. As a girl's father, there's something I should tell you. To have a strong rival in this world is a bad thing. That's how I see it. You're a fierce warrior, Devavrata, and whoever has you as his rival, even if he's a Gandharva or an Asura, and what to speak of a human being, could never live peacefully once you become angry with him. My lord, that and nothing else is the problem with this proposed marriage. I only desire the best for you, but please understand that I must consider this point in deciding whether or not to give away my daughter. Addressed in this way, the son of Ganga, who only thought of his father's interest, then replied to the fisherman's argument as the other kings sat and listened. You are an honest man, he told the fisherman king, and you should believe what I am about to tell you. There is no king, living or dead, who would dare to make such a vow. I now declare that the son born to your daughter shall become our lord and king. You say that your daughter's son should have no rival, and so it shall be. Thus addressed, the fisherman who was struggling to secure the kingdom for his grandson again spoke to Devavrata. You are indeed our lord, being the worthy representative of your father Shantanu, who was a monarch of unmeasured splendor. You are a just and religious man, and indeed you know what is fair in this matter. You have all power to decide how my daughter should be given. But please hear from me the following words, which I speak only out of a father's duty to his beloved daughter. My kind prince, there is yet something more to be done. I know that you are sworn to virtue and truth, and the vow you have taken in order to obtain Satyavati, my daughter, is indeed consistent with your high character. And yet, dear king, I have only this one doubt and no other. You may have a son, and that is my greatest worry. When your powerful son is born, there will be no peace for my daughter's child. Devavrata was sworn to virtue and truth, and he was dedicated to his father's happiness. When he understood the fisherman's decision, he took the following vow. O fisherman king, most respectable monarch, hear now my word which I speak for my father's sake in the presence of these kings. I have already renounced my father's kingdom in favor of your grandson, and I have now decided the following in relation to my descendants. From this day on, O fisherman, I accept brahmacharya, the difficult vow of celibacy. I shall have no children on this earth, but rather I shall attain those immortal worlds in the heavenly realm. When the fisherman who obeyed the law of dharma heard these words, he was filled with joy, and his hair stood on end. I must now give you my daughter, he said to Devavrata. Then in the space between heaven and earth, the celestial courtesans and the gods themselves, along with the great sages, showered down flowers, and they all cried out, this man is Bhishma, for Bhishma means awesome. And no, it's serious. Yes, it is. That's actually it. And Shantanu's son had given up all the young prince desires out of love for his father. Then Bhishma, as he would now be known, spoke to the illustrious Satyavati. My dear mother, please mount my chariot, for my father is waiting. We must go to our home. Having thus spoken, Bhishma lifted the beautiful woman onto his chariot and departed. Arriving in Hastinapur, he explained everything to King Shantanu. And the kings who had accompanied him highly praised his deeds, which were so difficult to perform. Indeed, whether they were assembled together or speaking privately, they glorified Shantanu's son, repeating the words of the gods. This man is Bhishma. And King Shantanu, seeing that his son had made the greatest sacrifice on his behalf, was most satisfied. Indeed, he granted his son an extraordinary blessing. Bhishma would only die when he so desired. So?
Thank you very much, Maharaj. When are you going to continue on?
Huh?
When are you going to continue?
Oh, there's more.
When?
When I'll continue reading. You arrange it. Advaita is my promoter. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Sri Mahabharata.
The following is a darshan with Hridayananda Das Goswami, December 24th, 1988, in Laguna Beach, California.
I guess this was our Christmas Eve gathering, wasn't it? Elementary, doctor. Actually, every day for us is a festival. Someone asked me, some relatives, they said, what are you going to do during Christmas? I said, oh, I guess what I usually do. No special fun. So, because every day, what do? We have our first dash at 4:30 in the morning. We have our first party at by 4:30 in the morning. We're already chanting, singing, dancing. Not because we stayed up all night. That's the first, isn't it? At 4:30 in the morning, we're already singing and dancing in ecstasy. Just see this life Prabhupada has given us. Singing and dancing. I talked to some other relatives that said, oh, I decided to become very, very serious about my life now. Really become dedicated to spiritual life. So now every morning I wake up, I have 5-minute meditation on God. He said, do you do something like that? I said, yes, we do 4 hours. So actually it's a fact. You get up, isn't it, we get up early, then we
And then we get up early, don't we, Jumila? Then we have our program till breakfast. And then after breakfast we go serve Krishna. Such a wonderful life. Who won't take to it? What is that verse? Ko va bhagavatas tasya punya slokedya karmana suddhi kamo nasinujadya satkali manapaham. It's a very nice verse. Ko va bhagavatas tasya punya slokedya. You know this verse?
I've heard it.
It means that who won't hear about Krishna's glories when these glories destroy all the evils of Kali? All these problems we have, being too lusty, too greedy, too proud, too envious, too angry, too depressed, too crazy, isn't it? We're too everything. All these things, what is this? This is all Kali Mala. It's all just the dirt of this age, or the impurity, the contamination of this very fallen materialistic age. So apaham means to drive away. So Krishna's glories, just by hearing about Krishna, drives away all these things. It's so miserable to be too lusty, to be too, or not even, what do you mean, what too lusty? How lusty is too lusty? All these things, with lust, greed, anger, fear, madness, just clinical bananas. And
No, I was going to provide a synonym for the last one. Never mind.
so all these things, depressed or frustrated or all these things, these are all the contamination of this age. It's all the contamination of this age. So that's why we can't have a moment's peace. The mind is torn this way, that way, isn't it? Otherwise, a pure Vaishnava can just sit down anywhere with great happiness and chant Krishna's name, and immediately there's pleasure. He doesn't have to waste his time with so many foolish arrangements for happiness. Anywhere in the world, he just sits down and chants Hare Krishna, immediately. All right, let's do it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jai. And immediately he's in ecstasy. Anywhere in the world, just sit down or even stand up and just chant Hare Krishna. And he's full of happiness. His life is full of pleasure. And not just like some type of mindless pleasure, drug-induced mindless pleasure. No. Full knowledge, satisfaction, understanding himself deeply, what he actually is, understanding what God is. It's so nice. It's so nice. This is freedom. Free from all these wicked and all these wicked slave-driving vices. Isn't it? Horrible thing. Horrible. It's like, I remember when I was a child, I used to see in the paper Little Orphan Annie, how she was some orphanage and there was some wicked woman or something that was forcing her to work, and naturally being a very indulged, me generation child, I was very shocked and horrified by that. And we were so pampered and spoiled that poor little orphan Annie in that poor orphanage with this terrible woman making her work, and isn't it? It's terrible. So actually our senses are like that. They're like that lady in the orphanage. Our senses are merciless, pulling us, driving us, no satisfaction, no happiness, no sanity, no peace. And Krishna Santasya, what is that verse? Krishna says, Nasti buddhir yuktasya Nacha juktasya bhavana, nacha bhavyatak shantir shanta sukutak sukam. If you're not engaged in Krishna consciousness, there's no intelligence. You can't understand things. And if you don't understand things properly, then you can't. If you don't have clear intelligence, you can't see the world as it really is. If you don't see things properly, you won't be peaceful. And he said, and for someone that's not peaceful, what is the question of happiness? If I'm not peaceful, if my senses are so disturbed that I'm not peaceful, then what is the question of happiness? The so-called material happiness, what does that mean? Just getting all excited. Just think of the word excitement. To be excited. It doesn't mean happy, it just means agitated. People say, I'm excited. What does it mean? Does it mean to be agitated? Oh, I'm agitated.